On this episode of the Nugget Project, we talk all about action cameras. Alrighty guys, today we're going to talk about action cameras. Now please excuse the noise, there is a thunderstorm outside. My old man is over there working on pulling apart a very rusty CB750 engine, so if you hear banging and swearing, that's that. But yeah, today we're going to talk about action cameras. Now, I get approached in the pits and get messages online a lot about, sort of mounting cameras, camera settings, all that sort of stuff. Now, I'm not an expert at video stuff, but I have been a photographer for a while now, 15, 16, 17 years or something. I am fairly new to video. Video is probably only maybe a couple of years for me now. I did study it back in the day, but never pursued it, went to photography instead. But my photography career has been pretty good, and I've been lucky enough to shoot for brands such as Lamborghini and BMW, and driving for Porsche, doing shoots for them. So I've been very lucky to be involved in the car world and shoot a lot of cool cars. And we have like my good mate Doug, who does video for the brand. So I usually shoot stills, he shoots video, and we kind of share that work. So I do get a lot of experience video-wise through that. But today we're going to talk about action cameras, because with the XL series especially, you do have to run a camera in car. But let's face it, racing is cool, and we all want to kind of be able to show our mates, sit our wife or our girlfriend down in front of the TV and go, look at me racing, and they're going to be bored out of their mind watching the footage, but we all want to do it. So let me show you what I use, and we're going to go through mounting the cameras, where to mount them, the settings, and some common problems that people have when running their cameras in their cars. Oh wow, the rain's really coming down now, so I'm sorry if it gets a bit loud in here. We are in a tin shed. Now I want to show you my action cameras. Now I'm quite a big fan of GoPro. They do have their issues, they're not all fantastic, but I've had a lot of luck with them. These are three of that's my current one, and these are a couple of my older ones. There was another one in there somewhere, but I think that got lost, God knows what. I did start off with the old 960, so it only went up to 960p. Your high definition TV goes to 1080p. So this didn't even get to high def. But this thing went through the ringer. I beat the crap out of this camera. I strapped it on the side of the cars in the snow. It's been on mountain bikes. It's been on snowboards. It's been everywhere. And honestly, like when it finally died, you probably can't see us on camera, but this thing is chipped and damaged to hell. And it somehow lived. So that kind of made me go, you know what, if it can stand up to that abuse, then I'm going to go with the next one. So then I went up to the next two cameras. I went with this little guy. This is a Hero 3 Black, and this was actually a great little camera, and I still use this. You'll see some of my footage from down low in the front bar, and there's another shot down low inside the car where you can see me driving, and that's from this camera. It's not amazing. It doesn't do well with vibrations, but it has done the job really well, and somehow it's still alive. Alrighty, so this is my current camera. It's actually a few generations old now. This is a Hero Black 7. But this is a fantastic camera, and if you're looking for a second-hand camera that will do everything, I'd recommend looking for these. You can pick them up for about 200 bucks now, and all my footage from pretty much the whole of the Nugget Project, I film everything with this camera, and it is brilliant. The sound quality is good, the vision's great, it's got fantastic stabilization, and I really rate it. And they've only gotten better from here, although I hear the new 10 has overheating issues. Might not go so well in a hot race car in Australia. Now, this guy, this is my latest addition to the family. This is actually a 360 camera. So this is the Insta360 1X2. And this is my latest addition. This is a really cool bit of kit. And I've had a lot of questions about it. If you have a look at my footage from the Lion track day and from my last race at Phillip Island, I use this a lot on the front of the roll cage so we can look around, we can see people coming around the side windows. It's very cool. Now, would I recommend this for racing? Yes, I would, if you already have one of these. Don't rely on this as your sole action camera. They're not cheap. They're about as much as a high-end GoPro, which I think is a good price considering what it can do, but there's a couple of downsides to them. Number one, you can use it as an action cam, and you just use, see, it's got a lens on both sides. It films with both of them, and it stitches them together into a 360 video. And you can just use one lens and use it as an action camera. The problem I find with this camera is it does everything okay, but it doesn't do one thing very well. And the quality out of this old generation GoPro is miles above this thing. Video quality and sound quality. I find the white balance on this, the auto white balance, is a mess. You find all the videos are just a really weird, washed out color. I've tried shooting in different color profiles. And look, I'm now shooting in log format, and we won't get into log format. You guys don't need to know about that, but that's basically a neutral color profile that you can color grade yourself in editing programs. You guys don't want to do that. You want to film, you want to take the card out, you want to put it in your computer, and you want to watch it, and you want to be able to upload that to YouTube. And that's what this will do. This guy will not. You'll have to stuff around with it a lot. The next thing also with the 360 is you do need to point the camera. And this is one of the cool things about this camera. It films, whoa, that storm is going off. It films everything. So everything inside the car, it's filming all the time. So what we do is we put that footage into the computer and we can then aim the camera at what we want. So if somebody, as we saw in my footage, if somebody comes past the car, we can follow them through the windows and out the front. We can then turn the camera around and show a bit of footage of me driving or out the windscreen. So the possibilities are fantastic, but you do have to go through and sit through all your footage and set in marking points, aim the camera, and do all that, and then export it as a normal video. So there is a lot more work involved. The other thing with that is it shoots at 5.6K. So you know your 4K TV? This is 5.6K. It is high resolution because it's filming everything, and the file sizes are massive. One of those races that we did at Phillip on, I think one race is about 12 gigabyte of data, maybe more, maybe like 16. I'll have to have a look. That's a lot. And I've got a 128 gig card in there. That's no problem. But if I'm doing 3 races and then practice and then doing other things with this, my hard drives are getting shockers with these files. And so that's another thing to consider with these cameras. And I've had a lot of people go, you know, should I get one of these? And look, if you've got the money and you don't mind spending the extra time, right, sort of stuff, and you already have one of these, sure, go with one of these, they're great fun. But don't rely on it as your sole action camera. Holy crap, it is getting harder to film. Much rain, many thunder. Poor Subi. Okay, the storm has calmed down a little. One thing I do want to bring up before we go too far. So with your action cam, buy whatever you want. You know, there's lots of different brands out there. DJI have some great ones. And there's a lot of Chinese knockoff ones that do pretty well. Don't fall into the trap of looking at the specs and going, yes, that's as good as a GoPro or as good as a DJI or whatever. Just because the camera is 4K doesn't mean it's good, okay? Look at reviews online. There is so many good websites for action camera reviews. I've seen a lot of people get stung by buying these cheap Chinese things that look identical to a GoPro. And on the stat sheet, it has the same resolution and all this stabilization stuff. In practice, it looks like junk, okay? The footage just looks terrible. The colors are washed out, the stabilization isn't very good. The images are very noisy. Noisy images means, I remember with your old mobile phone, you try and take a photo at night and it's got like all the dust and speckles on the screen. That's digital noise. That's the sensor trying to do more than it's capable of, basically. And a lot of these Chinese cameras have very, very small sensors that struggle in any sort of low light. They also have a very low dynamic range. What that means is, if you're taking a photo or a video, it struggles with the brights and it struggles with the darks, and it might get that in-between bit okay, but everything else either side of that's gonna look like crap. So don't fall in the trap of just going, yeah, that's got good specs, that's gonna be good. It's not. That's like saying a 1.5 litre, all 1.5 litre cars are gonna be the same speed, or all 2 litre cars are gonna be the same speed. We all know that is not true. So the next thing we need to look at is memory cards. Not all memory cards are made equal. So I'm a big fan of SanDisk. I've been using professional SanDisk cards the entire time I've been shooting, and I've never had a real SanDisk card die. I say real because I did buy a SanDisk off eBay and it turned out to not be the right card. It still works, but it's slow, it had issues. do yourself a favor, they're not expensive these days. Go and buy from a reputable buyer, you know, JB, Harvey Norman, whatever. Go and buy it off the shelf. You'll save yourself a lot of trouble, because what you don't want is to film for the day, come home, and all your footage is gone. You will be very, very sad. So, this is a micro SD, a SanDisk one. Something you need to make sure is that your card is fast enough for your action camera. When you buy your camera, it'll tell you in instructions what speed card you need. This GoPro at full resolution needs a U3. Now, at the bottom of the card there, I'll try and film it, but it's very small. It says U3, and this is it's a SanDisk Extreme, U3. That means that'll be plenty fast enough, because if it's not quick enough, especially with something like this, it's very high data rate, it won't be able to record, and it'll stop recording. And you'll be out on track, and then after a while the buffer will run out and you won't be able to record footage, and that sucks. So make sure you get a proper memory card that is fast enough. And this little guy, honestly, they're like $19 now. They're so cheap. Go and get the right thing. Cool, so we're gonna jump in the car soon and have a look at different mounting positions. But before we do that, let's have a look at some mounts that are available. So probably the one for race cars that is the most popular is this guy. This is a roll cage mount. Actually finding them hard to find now, but this is a genuine GoPro roll cage mount, and I got to give it to them. They do a good job. There's a lot of cheap stuff on eBay, and I find they're not very good. This one is great, and it's a good little mount. It clamps on well. You can buy all these different sections, so you can kind of adjust where the camera sits. Now, the other good thing about GoPro mounts is inside of all the knobs, so you can do up all the knobs with your hands to tighten the camera. But it actually has a Phillips head inside, and you can put a screwdriver in it and crank on these puppies tight, and I do that to stop any movement, like, you know, if you hit any bumps or anything like that, ripple strips. Sometimes the cameras can move down or whatever. Crank them up with a Phillips head and they do not move. They are a fantastic mount. They're sort of like 30, 40 bucks, really good piece of kit. Now, for non-race cars but are going out on track days, you don't have a roll cage, so what do? Well, this is a GoPro suction mount. I'm wary of suction mounts. Obviously, you're just relying on a suction cup to hold up a very expensive piece of equipment. This is a genuine one, and this has been really good. I've actually used this. This has been on the outside of cars in the YouTube series I filmed, Carnage, for Street Machine. So we put it on the outside of Superman down the strip. No problem, holds on fine. I've used this on the inside of the car for shooting the camera for Nugget project. And I also strapped this to the side of a car in Japan and then drifted it around in the snow. Don't ask, it was just the thing I was doing. I don't even know where that footage is. And it didn't let go. It was good. However, if you do put it outside the car, one thing I do, bear with me, is I keep a couple of lanyards in my kit bag, and I actually attach a lanyard to the clamp and then shut it in the car door, like put it on the inside of the car, wrap it around the handle or the headrest or something, shut it in the car door, and then attach that to the mount. And so if the mount does let go, it's basically just gonna swing and scratch up the side of your car, but you're not gonna lose a camera. So I always tether anything that's outside the car, just in case. But for if you wanna do footage of you racing and you don't have a roll cage, you can put this on the inside of your side window. You can then aim it up and aim it at you, aim it at the windscreen. You can put it on your windscreen facing back. Bear in mind, some track days and some companies don't like you doing that. So maybe check with the course marshal first to make sure you're not gonna get in trouble. The next clamp I want to show you, this is a new one of mine. This is a gecko clamp, and this is very cool. It's made by a company called Delkin, and this is the Gecko Jewel or something. It's a serious bit of kit. These suction cups are rated for something like 40 kilos each, so this could technically hold up 80 kilos. Like, I could pretty much hang off this thing. Very cool, and I bought that for this guy so I could do some external shots. And I have used it. So once again, with Street Machine, we put this on the outside of the car to get some shots of Superman. I put it on the inside, and it's been really good. It's not cheap though. These are about 120 bucks or something. And they do a triple one where there's another suction cup there, and that really doesn't move. But that's a cool bit of kit. Okay, you sticking with me? Last but not least, while we're here looking at equipment, I just want to show you a couple other things real quick. If you are doing any external stuff with GoPros, Once again, you got to look at your track days, you got to see what you're allowed to do. I have run cameras external on this car before, but that was at Haunted Hills, which is a hill climb course, so there's no other cars out on track, and that's fine. So usually they allow you to stick a GoPro on the outside. I run this little guy, so my mate Doug gave me this. This is just a foam sock that goes around the camera, and it just stops the wind noise, and it works really well. The bizarre thing about GoPros, I don't know about all GoPros, but this one, the audio is brilliant. The sound, the engine sounds out of this are fantastic. I've put professional mics on cars, and I've ended up using the GoPro sound over the professional mics. I don't know, it just works great. So yeah, one of those little wind socks, you can get them on eBay, they're like $5. Worth it if you're ever putting your camera outside your car. And the last one I want to talk to you about is power. All these action cameras, all of them, every single one in the world, suck power. They do not last long. This is the best on power. I find I can usually get about half a day filming out of this. I do have a bag full of batteries, and the batteries aren't cheap. The batteries are like $60 each or something. But what you can do is when you're not using your camera, get one of these little guys. This is just a phone battery pack, and you can plug it directly into the camera, like thus, and that camera is now charging. Easy. You can even leave it in the car and plug it in, and you can run that while you're filming. So as long as you can secure this in the car, and I mean secure, I'd be taping it and cable tie it and everything. You do not want that flying around your car. You can leave it plugged in, and that will give you just a huge amount of power for your GoPro. So that's a really cool option. When you're in the pits, however, I've got one of these. So I'm a bit of a Ryobi fan. I know everyone goes, Ryobi, you should get Milwaukee. Yeah, cool, you pay for the Milwaukee stuff, you dick. The Ryobi stuff is really good for the price, and this little guy is just a USB port adapter. So that goes on your big battery. That's a 4 amp hour. I've got a 5 amp hour as well. And that gives you 2 USB ports to charge. And I charge all my cameras, my phone, everything off of one of these. And that's great. So like when you're not, when you're back in the pits and you're not filming anything, you just plug all your action cams in there. And I found I can charge, at Phillip On, I think I used the one battery. I charged that camera, and my phone constantly, just cycling them all. I used about a quarter of this big battery up, that was it. So that's a really cool thing. And those little adapters, if you've already got Ryobi gear, I'm sure other brands have them too. I think that thing's like 30, 40 bucks. It is one of the best things I own. It is really good. Very last thing, I promise. Very last 2 things. Talking about charging, I got this little charger for that camera. And so you can take the, oh no, I'm running away, my battery pack's running away. You can take the batteries out, and if you want to charge multiple batteries, that will charge 3 GoPro batteries at a time. So you can stick them all in there, charge them all up, and you can plug that into that guy, and that'll charge 3 batteries at once. Really good. The last thing I want to talk about here is this. This is a remote for this older camera. And you can strap that to your roll cage or your steering wheel and start recording. It's a cool bit of kit. I didn't use this much with this camera because I found the connection issues were a bit crap. You can connect your phone to all the new action cams, but I think GoPro still do, and I know Insta360 do a little remote like this, which means you don't have to worry about having all this footage, because what I do is I get in the car, once I'm strapped in, I can't reach that camera, my arm doesn't bend that way. So I start the camera recording, strap in, helmet. So I always have about 30 minutes of footage of me getting ready, going to the dummy grid, sitting there waiting, sweating, thinking about all my life choices and everything I've done wrong, and then go racing. And so that's a lot of footage that's wasted. It's battery life, it's camera data, it's all that sort of stuff. So these little things are a cool option. It's something I'm probably going to look at for both these cameras, just to save me on battery and data. Anyway, that's all that. Let's have a look inside the car as to where to mount cameras. Now, I want to talk to you guys about camera positioning, because it's obviously very important. I've played around. You can see my cage is very complex. Rob did an amazing job. It's a national spec cage and probably way too nice for the likes of this car. It's beautiful, but it has a lot of places I can mount cameras, which is really cool. Having a play around with camera positions Now, I've spoken to a lot of people and everyone comes up and gives me different recommendations of where I should put the camera and all that sort of stuff, and I appreciate your input. I have found the best spot for my action cam is right here. So this is my permanent cage. This roll cage mount and this cage stay in this car and do not move. And my main GoPro, which I will turn on for you now, we can show you the footage as it goes in, goes right in there. Now I've also set this GoPro up to be one touch record, which means you just press the top button, it turns the camera on, starts recording, press it again, stops recording, turns the camera off. It's a cool little feature. Now we'll wedge that in there. Now you can see from that bit of footage there, now obviously it's very bright outside, the sun's just come out after the storm. What we get there is a bit of an angle. Now the wingback race seat does block a bit, but we can see when the steering wheel's on, we can see the steering wheel, we can see the gear shifter. We can see a bit of peripheral outside the car, so we can see a little bit out the windows, and we get a clear view outside the windscreen, which is really cool. So this is kind of, I would say, your standard position. This is kind of your see everything, you can see where you're going. It's a good angle for an action cam, and after stuffing around, this is pretty much my go-to angle. Now, a lot of guys and girls run their cameras, get out, up here or sort of down here. Now, that's okay. Now, the reason they want to do that is because they want to see more of themselves in the footage. Now, I think that's cool as a second camera angle, but if you're only running one camera in the car, I don't think it's right. Now, the reason for that is the camera isn't straight, and when you're driving along, you want to be able to look, you want to put yourself kind of in the situation as if you were driving the car, looking at the footage. If you're out here, everything's rushing towards you at a weird angle. You know, you're not going straight. You know, you want that out the windscreen angle, almost like you're sitting in the back seat. Who sits in a car at this angle and looks around? Like it's weird, and you can't see as much. So it is a very cool angle. I dig it, but I think if you're only running one camera, I wouldn't be running that. So my advice is to run a similar sort of angle here. Now, something to keep in mind, and this is a problem with the XLs, is the height. We have to run obviously a windscreen banner, the Trick Trailers banner, and that does block a lot of view. And I've got this whopping great big rear view mirror, which I like because it means I can see people around me, but that does block us a lot as well. So you don't want to be too high that that's blocking your view down the road, but you also don't want to be so low that your dashboard's kind of blocking everything as well. Now, another view that I see a lot of is basically on the dashboard looking out the front windscreen. For some people, this can be maybe their only option. You know, if you've got a no roll cage, you've only got a suction mount, you need to sort of put it there looking at the front windscreen. That's fine, but if you watch that footage and then you watch something of this kind of angle, it's boring as hell. Unless you've got a lot of other cars on track and there's a lot going on, it's a really boring camera angle, and I would avoid it. Pretty much whenever I start watching a video and somebody's running that camera angle, I'm 10 seconds in and I turn it off. I'm bored. You need that action, you need that driver in view, you need the gear changes, you need the steering. When you've got that, there's a lot to look at. You've got everything outside the car, but you've also got everything inside the car. And I think that's really important for telling the story when you're racing. You know, if you just want footage to review for yourself, that's fine. But also, if you can see yourself in your preview footage, you can see your gear changes, you can see your steering angle. It's probably going to help you as well, sort of figure out what you're doing right and wrong with your driving. So yeah, the dashboard looking out, I don't really rate it. And if you can avoid it, I'd avoid it. For people that don't have a roll cage, if you do have a sunroof, good thing is you can run a suction cup off the sunroof. And I've done that in cars before and it works really well. Alternatively, rear window, run a suction cup mount, take your headrest off. It will give you that slightly side on view, not a straight, but it's still better than on the dashboard. So that's a really good option too. And play around with it and see what you can come up with. There's a lot of contorting myself in weird places today. So yeah, primary camera angles, I'd aim for something sort of behind the front seats, looking through. I think it's a good angle. You guys do what you want to do, but I feel that's the best from my experience. Now, a cool thing to do in race cars, street cars, whatever, is to see the driver. You want to see those gear changes. You want to see that steering. You want to see that intense concentration. So having a camera on driver, I think, is a good idea. You want more than that. You want your primary camera, but if you're running a secondary cam, then that's a cool thing to do. So you would have seen a few of my videos. I ran my little, where is he? My old camera, this little guy. And I ran it down here. So let's turn on my GoPro and we can show you the angle. The light's going to be terrible because I'm shooting into the light. It should give you a bit of an idea. So I kind of ran the camera here, and then you can see me driving, you can see the shifts, you can see the inside of the car, and you can see the roll cage, and it's all kind of a cool, I think, a creative angle. It's pretty sweet. So that's not a bad thing, you know, kind of on the footwell. You can run like a suction cup off the window, run it here, that sort of thing, and it'll give you the same sort of view. And I think that's cool as a secondary camera, and then you can flick between the two. I warn you now, editing 2 bits of footage at the same time, running 2 cameras, is a pain in the neck. It's a lot of work if you want to sync it up properly. Running my 360 camera and combining that footage is so time consuming. Oh my God. But it does look cool, I think. So the other one you'd notice here is this. So this is my clamp for my 360 camera. This is actually a roll cage clamp that I've clamped up, and I know it's got the gross tape on it, but I like the extra security. So I clamp it on there, tape it all up so the screws can't come loose, and if it does, hell, duct tape can hold the world together, so it ain't moving, it ain't going anywhere. So I do run my 360 camera. Where is he? Right here, which you would have seen in footage from Phillip Island and from the Line track day. Now, the weird thing about 360 cameras is it doesn't even have to be pointing at you and it can see you. The thing is, because it's got the 2 lenses and it does stitch around, everything on that line in the middle can be a bit funky, especially if it's close to the camera. You would have noticed this part of the roll cage looks a bit weird. That's because it's too close to the roll cage. Not much I can do about that unless I bring it up here, which is dangerous. So I put it here and in line with the edge of the A-pillar, and that way, if the stitching's a bit weird, it's only the A-pillar it's cutting out. It's not cutting out my face or anything really necessary, you know, it's all just whatever stuff. So yeah, I put it in line there with the windscreen, then I can look out the windscreen, I can look back at myself, and I can watch people come past the car and all that sort of stuff, which is really, really cool. So they're kind of my recommendations for in-car mounting. I did do a bit of footage from the footwell where I did mount my old camera down the footwell looking at the pedals. I think this is cool, and I kind of did it as a bit of fun. My footwork is nowhere near as fancy as most of the guys. You know, there's guys left foot braking and all that sort of stuff. You know, I kind of did it to show a bit of double D clutching, well, double clutching, and throttle blipping and all that sort of stuff. And it's cool for people that don't race and don't do that sort of thing to see kind of what you do with your feet in the race car. So that was good. And I just basically clamped it on the roll cage. If you don't have a cage, I don't know, figure it out. The last thing about mounting inside a car, I will say, many racetracks do want you to tether your camera. So you have your proper mount, and then you do need a secondary tether. Now, I think you can just cable tie it. I have used a bit of electrical cable, so electrical cable, cable tie to the camera, and then cable tie to the cage, and that's your secondary tether. Honestly, if that mount was to break, like that proper GoPro mount, I don't even know what catastrophic thing has happened inside that car. If that's breaking off, my seat's probably coming off. Like, it's that bad. So, you know, it's these companies just wanting to cover themselves. That is fine. I understand. If a marshal comes and tells you to do it, just do it. Don't fight with them. Most of them are volunteers. Don't be a dick, okay? Do what they're saying. Cool. I think that's the inside of the car covered. Now, I do need to cover settings because there's some important stuff in here, and it's the stuff that catches people out. So hold on. We're going to have a quick look at the outside of the car, and then we're going to come back to settings. All right, we're switching over to GoPro now because I'm going to show you places you can mount things like this. Now, once again, this is only for tracks that allow you to do this. Like, I've done hill climbs where that's okay. I think most track days, probably not. Go and speak to the clerk of course. Oh, why can't I talk today? and see if it's okay before you do any of this, okay? Anyway, disclaimers out the way. Here's a few angles. You can stick cameras pretty much anywhere, but here's a few angles I found work really well. I think on the side of the car here, obviously the camera's not aligned. You want the camera to be facing up. On the side of the car here, where you can see the wheel turning, things like that's pretty cool. Facing backwards, if somebody's chasing you, is a pretty cool angle. Now, a little note about suction cups. They grip really well on glass, not so well on paintwork, unless you've got a very shiny paintwork. I do not, we all know that. So I would not trust this suction cup on the paint of this car. I feel it would probably let go, and that would be sad. I think I've put it on there before now saying that, but I probably won't do it in the future. Other angles, if you do have good paintwork, kind of here where you can see the wheel moving. I think that's the shot I have done. I think I might have done it here. Facing forward so you can see the wheel turning and you see the tire loading up. And that was pretty cool. I'll see if I can find that footage. But I did have it tethered. I had the tether going up to the side mirror and it was all... I was pretty much expecting it to fall off, and so I had it tethered waiting for it to fall off. Things I found that don't really work is up on the windscreen here. It's a bit boring. It's okay. The higher your action camera is, the slower the footage looks. The lower down you can get it, the faster things look. There's a tip for you. They're wide angle lenses. They do well with things close to them. So if the ground's closer, it's going to look faster. If you have the camera way up in the air, everything's going to look slow. So one of the fastest views I've got is this guy. So I've got that GoPro mount. I've actually screwed that permanently into my front bumper, and I've run my old camera there. And that's a really cool bit of footage. I'll dig that up and you can see that. But it looks fast and it's close to the engine. It sounds good. That's a cool little mount, that. Once again, probably won't be allowed on all tracks, but I put it there for some and it's been really cool. The last one I did was I mounted that guy up here for the line track day and then got our friend Josh to chase us. And that worked out really cool. That was a cool bit of footage. I think having a big camera poking up off the back of the car is probably something a lot of tracks are going to be very unhappy about. But this was a track day that we helped organise and they were cool with it, and we got Josh chasing and it looked really cool. So that's some kind of ideas for external cameras. Always check you're allowed to do it, but have a play around with it. See what works for you. See what's cool. Okay, so next thing I'm going to talk about is camera settings. Now this is the thing I probably get asked the most, and I'm sorry I put it at the end of the video, but I did. I'm going to be using my Hero 7 as a demonstration for this, but all the cameras are the same. They all have the same, basically, ability to change all these different settings. The settings may be different, as in high resolution, different stabilization, all that sort of stuff. But it all boils down to the same thing. It's just the menus will be different. So you just need to look in your manual, Google it, jump on a forum. Once you know what to ask for, you can jump on a forum and go, how do I change my exposure compensation or any of that sort of stuff? Somebody will be able to help you. Okay, let's get going. So down here on my GoPro, this is the basic settings. So we're going to there, and this gives us the basic settings of the camera. Now, up here, this is our resolution and our frame rate. So res and FPS, frames per second. We won't go too deep into the whole video side of things. We'll just do the basics. So resolution, 1080 is 1080p. That is your high definition. You know, you buy your high def TV. Pretty much most TVs most people have now will be HD, which is 1080. That is what I record nearly all my stuff at. It is the best sort of balance between using a lot of data, using a lot of battery, and getting high quality. So 1080 is what I record at. You see the other options down here. We've got 720, 1080, 2.7, and 4K. 4K, we've all heard that now. That is your 4K TV, whatever. That is pretty much the highest resolution on the standard market. We are now coming out with 8K TVs, things like that. 4K is very good. It's high quality, it's fantastic. To be honest, it is overkill. Now, you'll see maybe a couple of channels like Mighty Car Mods start doing their specials in 4K. Nearly every video on YouTube is 1080 at the moment. 4K is very much overkill. So unless you want to use a heap of memory I'd probably stay away from 4K. There's no need for it. The only reason you'd go 4K is you can zoom in on it. 4K is more data. So you can actually zoom in on a 4K video and it'll bring you down to 1080. That is kind of the only reason to shoot in 4K in my mind at the moment for what we're doing as racers. This side of the camera, this is our frame rate, 25. That means it's 25 frames a second. Every second it takes 25 photos, which gives us a smooth vision, which gives us video. 25 is the standard for Australia. We run on the PAL system. PAL is 25 frames a second. In America, they run on the NTSC system because they're a pain in the neck, which is either, depending on who you talk to, 30 frames a second or 29.75 something, which is even more ridiculous. It's like, sounds like inches to me. Come on, America. But yes, in Australia, run on 25 frames a second. The other thing you'll see up the top here is 16:9. 16:9 is your standard video format these days. That's your widescreen. The old school was 4:3, which you remember our old fairly square TVs. They were 4:3. All TVs, laptops, everything these days are pretty much 16:9. So if you've got the ability in your camera to adjust that, don't. Leave it on 16:9. No need to change that. Now, the only reason you'd want to change your frame rate is if we have a look here, it gives us options here to shoot in a higher frame rate. So if we select 100, that means we're now shooting 100 frames a second. What the cool thing about that is we can slow down our footage. Oh, why do you go back out to that? We can slow down our footage 4 times. So we can actually drop our footage down to 4 times slower than normal. So if there's cool action, there's a crash, you're sliding, you're drifting, whatever, and you want to slow down and get that cool, smooth footage, 100 frames a second will allow you to do that. Once again, it will use up a lot more data on your memory card. So if it's something you're not going to do regularly, you're not going to slow down footage, I'd avoid that. This camera actually goes up to 200 frames a second. Don't worry about that. It's just a warning for a formatting thing. But at 200 frames a second, we can now slow down that footage 8 times slower. That is really cool. Once again, it's going to use a lot more memory. And the other problem we have with that is it looks very choppy. Now, 50 frames a second is actually quite smooth. The footage looks buttery, it looks smooth, it looks great. When you go to 200, it's taking those frames so quick that everything looks a little bit jerky and it looks a little bit weird. So unless you're going to slow down the footage, avoid those higher frame rates. The only one I'd say is a good middle ground is 50. 50 means you can slow it down to half the speed, it'll still look no problem, and your normal footage will look fine. So if you think you're ever going to slow it down a little bit, 50 is a good compromise. A lot of people run their cameras on 50 frames a second. I run on 25 because I don't want to chew through data, and that is fine for me. But that's what the frame rate means. So you can select that, and that's good to go. Now, GoPros and a lot of action cameras have something here called FOV. This is your field of view. And that changes how wide the camera shoots. Now, we'll use a little demo here. So we'll go linear. This is what I shoot on most of the time. This is the most natural view out of the camera. So we'll record a bit of footage now. So we've got a camera there. This is a linear view. Now, if we change that to wide, you can see we get a lot more view, but notice we start getting that curving on the side of frame. And it's a little bit fisheye, it's a little bit distorted. So it's good if you're trying to get a really wide view inside the car, it's not bad. And now we come to super wide. And you can see it is very wide, it's kind of cool, but once again we get that really bubbly fisheye look. It's cool in a car, because if we go back into our car view and have a look, gotta climb into the boot, hang on. You'll see, we can see everything, but see how it's very distorted and the windscreen looks really, really far away. Whereas if we go back to linear, we get a much more natural look inside the car. The windscreen doesn't look a million miles away, and I think it's just a nicer look. Once again, this is a preference, so you guys do what you want. That's kind of my Thoughts, I like the linear, I like the not so fisheye look. We can see a lot more out the windscreen and it doesn't distort everything as much. Now, the last thing in this menu to talk about is the stabilization. If you have a look here, we can press our stabilization and basically gives us auto or off. I run stabilization on this camera in the car. Now you'll see in my footage, when I'm going around tight corners, we get like a sway, and that's the G-forces making the camera think it's moving. So it tries to compensate that by steering. I actually kind of like this look. I kind of did it by accident and went, it looks like somebody's in the back of the car filming, and I like that. It's a bit more dynamic, it's a bit more organic, it looks kind of cool. So I've used that. Now, I'll show you the different stabilization on this camera is huge. So if we have the stabilization on, and we'll press record now, I'll show you, and we'll give the camera a bit of a shake and a bit of a wobble around. So you can see the movement, but it's not too bad. Now, let's stop that. And we will turn stabilization off, and I'll show you the difference because it is huge. So there we go, stabilization off, off, and let's go again. Now this is with stabilization off, doing exactly the same thing, giving it a shake, giving it a wiggle. You can see how much any vibration, any movement, it shows all of it. Now if you're in a car, you can, if you've got one of your good clamps, you can clamp it down and you can take out all these vibrations. But you imagine in a car you've got this kind of vibration and movement all the time, and it really shows on camera. And my old GoPro didn't have stabilization and it really shows. So the movement in camera, in car, may not be for everyone, but I think the stabilization makes it worth it. So I leave the stabilization on all the time, regardless. I think it's just so good, it's worth having, and it just makes sure your footage doesn't go all funky and weird and dumb. Okay, so we're inside the car, and I've got the camera in the roll cage mount for this one. This is the biggest issue that I've found with nearly everybody's footage. Inside the car is too dark, outside the car is too bright. Now, there's a reason for this. Your camera doesn't suck, you suck, and I'll show you why. Now, my car interior is white, and I left it that way for a reason, is because I want the car to be bright inside. Now, at the moment, I'm parked inside a shed, so this is a very hard demonstration. I can't get the car out right now because I've got motorbikes and cars and everything in the way. But we are pointing at the garage door, and you can see outside is very bright at the moment. I find my car, I'm pretty lucky with the fact that it's fairly even. The outside is bright, but it's not too bad, and that is because of my white interior. You see a lot of cars are painted black inside and the exposure is all whack. Now, it's not your fault. That's just, you know, your car's black, whatever. There is a way to combat this, but bear in mind, you have to choose. Do you want to see outside the car or do you want to see inside the car? You can't have it both ways. This is called dynamic range. This is how much light we can, how much detail we can see in the light and how much detail we can see in the dark. The more expensive the camera, the greater the dynamic range, and the more you'll see in both of those. The camera we're shooting on at the moment has an exceptional dynamic range for what it is. Not that it shows right now. GoPros, I think, do a fantastic job, and this is where you'll see the real difference between your Chinese camera and your expensive camera, like a GoPro, DJI, whatever, or a Sony, yada, yada, yada. Alrighty, so the thing we need to do to fix all this is exposure compensation. So what we're telling the camera is, you're exposing this footage, I want it to be lighter or darker. Now, because we want to see outside the car, we want to see the action, we want it to be lighter. So on this GoPro, I don't know what this is like with other models and other cameras, but what we do for this one is you just touch it once, it gets rid of all the icons, and then I hold down on the screen and see there it now says spot metering, and I'm telling it, I want you to expose outside the car. I want you to expose where I'm pointing there, and I click that in, and that's now locked the exposure to outside the car. So the inside of the car is going to be darker, but the outside is going to be more exposed. And this is what you want to do. Now, other cameras have, what's called exposure compensation. When you go into your menu here, there'll be a little thing that'll have a square with a plus and a minus. You can click on that and it'll go minus 0.3, minus 0.7, minus 0.1, and this is your exposure compensation. You're telling the camera that whatever you're exposing for, I want you to be lighter or darker than that. And every single camera will have this. I guarantee it. Your phone has it. This is the thing people don't know about mobile phones. All phone cameras actually have exposure compensation, and you can hold down exactly the same as the GoPro and make your photo lighter or darker. So if you're taking photos of storm clouds, press it and you can make your phone camera darker. So this is a very important thing to do. I found before we had to get the Trick Trailers banner on this car, I had really good exposure in and out the car. Unfortunately, that Trick Trailers banner over the windscreen just darkens down the interior a little too much and makes the exterior too bright. That sucks, but you know, we very much appreciate the support of Trick Trailers in the XL series, so we put up with that. I'm gonna grab my phone real quick and show you exactly the same thing on my phone to show you that's what it's like on action cams. One sec. Right, so here is my very fancy pants Samsung Fold 2 phone, which I love. Anyway, this is exactly the same as nearly all action cams and what we were doing on our GoPro. Click, and this one actually has a slider, so we can slide that down and you can see now everything out that windscreen is much better exposed. And that's all you have to do. And they set that and your video will look 10 times better. If you don't have that, just use your exposure compensation, just your little, and exposure compensation is probably just as easy, if not easier. You just set it up or set it down and you can sit. The good thing about an XL is you jump in the back, you can see your screen and you can set it. Piece of cake. Okay friends, and that is it. I think I've kind of covered everything. I'm sorry, it's a lot to kind of cover in a video and it's very hard to demonstrate this. I'm trying to film on a camera on a tripod while showing you this, and I'd usually film with this and all that sort of stuff. But feel free to message me if you've got any questions. I will try to get back to you in due time. And if you're at the track and you want any help with setting up your cameras or, you know, playing with settings, please feel free to hit me up. But if you do have any questions about your camera, honestly, YouTube is an invaluable source. Jump on, type in your camera model, type in your questions. So, you know, GoPro Hero 7 exposure compensation. I 100% guarantee you someone will have a video on how to set it up, how to change it, or I know they will because we just did it, but somebody else will have that. Same with any of your other cameras. Play around with it. Track days are really good for this. If you're doing a test and tune day, put your camera in, try different angles, see what works, play with your settings, and hopefully you can get some ripper footage. I'm thoroughly enjoying, I bought this camera for the Nugget project. I was filming on my phone the first 10 episodes, and then I bought this. It wasn't cheap. I think I paid about $800 for this when it first came out, but this camera has done so much work. Every episode up until now, I filmed with this. It goes in the car, it goes outside the car. I use it for so much. I use it at work for shooting dyno stuff. And yes, they're an investment, but as long as you look after them, cycle the batteries, charge them properly, and try not to drop them, try not to put them in stupid situations where they are going to die. They will last you a long time. This is years old now. This is 2.5, 3 years old. I use it every day and it is fantastic. So yes, invest in a good bit of gear and you will love it. Thanks again for watching. Hopefully we'll have some more videos for you soon. We're going to do, I keep saying this in every video, we are going to do delivery on this thing. I might just bring the vinyl cutter down here and we'll vinyl cut and then put it straight on the car. That's probably an easy thing to do. Let's do that. That'd be fun. And all that sort of stuff. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully that was helpful and we'll see you on the next video. You.